They wanted to see something different, but something different saw them first. The Hills Have Eyes.
The Hills Have Eyes is a 1977 horror film from director Wes Craven. It is his second film after The Last House on the Left, a film I didn't much care for, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, it doesn't really star anyone of that much note, with the exception of maybe Dee Wallace, who, for anyone who knows me, I'm a bit of a Critters fanboy. I like Dee Wallace, not just because of Critters, other things like E.T. and Cujo and things like that. She's a pretty good stalwart of the horror genre, I would say. For me personally, I know there's some detractors out there, but yeah, I like Dee Wallace. So nice to see her pop up here. And Michael Berryman as well, known for his look. He's the one who's all over the poster. He's the one who's, unfortunately for him, has been given the role of the inbred, so to speak, because of how he looks. Poor guy. But I know him from an episode of The X-Files called Revelation, or Revelations, or whatever it was. He made quite an impact in that episode for me. And I've seen him in other things since, but that was like my introduction to him. But yeah, so this is about a family that are traveling to somewhere, and they decide to make a stop in a place where they're explicitly told by a local not to stop. This guy says, don't go there. It's these silver mines. They want to check them out. And they say, what do they know? And they go there anyway. So you know instantly that they're in trouble. And that trouble comes in the shape of a family of inbreds that live in the hills and decide that these guys, this family, is going to be on the menu, their next meal, so to speak. Now, this is clearly a low-budget film. It's not granted the kind of Hollywood backing that a film like, say, The Exorcist was granted. This is like your bag-in-bucket kind of cheap thrills, let's cobble it together with what meager budget we have kind of movie making. And sometimes that yields pretty golden results. When you've got people who are all working together to try and create something and they're restricted, it breeds creativity at times. It really does only feel like there's 3 locations in this movie. There's like a gas station, which is like, I say, the place where this local who is linked to the inbred family in some way, he's the one who warns them, don't go up there. He's actually doing them a favour. There's that. Then there's this place where they break down, where the caravan is. That's kind of like the location that they use in the desert. And then there's in the hills themselves. There's these rocky bits where, presumably they will have found a place where all these rocky bits were, and they'd have dotted themselves about and shot in various places. But like I say, very, very limited. The film is very grainy as well. It feels like maybe they've used the cheapest film stock possible. It's again, as I say, I think a lot of the time that's why so many horror movies were kind of born out the way that they were, because they're cheap to make, and a lot of the look of horror movies, many of the time, is down to the fact that it is cheap. They are using cheap film stock and things like that. So, but it lends itself to that genre. Like, you couldn't get away with that in another genre, where actually this grainy, gritty, dirty look would betray like a rom-com. It just wouldn't look right, whereas the horror genre lent itself to cheap filmmaking, because the look you get from cheap filmmaking it just works. It's grittier, it's darker, it's dirtier. Now, Susan Lanier Bramlett gets top billing on this film. I can't say I've ever seen her in anything else. If I have, then clearly she didn't make enough of an impression to stick with me. But she is super annoying in this film, with the constant wailing and screaming. It's one of those movies where you'll get a particular female character. In this case, it's hers, where she just doesn't stop screaming, and you kind of wanting to put cotton wool in your ears. It's like, just stop. I get it. you're in fear. It's that kind of movie, but it just feels like all she does is scream. Now, in fairness, her character is the one towards the end of the film that does actually start to formulate a plan. She's the one who decides, you know what, we've got to fight back. We can't die here. We've got to do something. So I appreciate that from Craven. Putting that element into the script, but man alive is she annoying with all the screaming, incessant screaming. Other than her incessant screaming, I feel like a lot of the interplay between the family and the way in which they react to what's going on, their situation, is actually quite believable. I feel like it feels quite natural. It feels like the kind of reaction I would have, or anybody would have, to these circumstances. So yeah, like just even the way it's played out with one particular character who goes searching for the dog. They have these two dogs, and one of them runs off, and he finds it dead, butchered. But he's left on his own to look after the women while the other guys have gone off to get help. And he doesn't tell them about the dog, and it's because he doesn't want to frighten them. Now, that's never explicitly said by him, but you know that that's why he's keeping it from them. So I like the way that Craven directs that. I like the way that there is no dialogue to say that why he's doing that, but you get the sense of why he's doing that, because you realise in that situation, yeah, I wouldn't tell them because they're going to get in hysterics. It's going to freak them out. So keep it on the down low until the other guys get back. So it's little things like that where the interplay feels genuine. There's a moment I didn't like when the guys go off to look for help. Then the mother kind of gets them all together first and says, let's have a prayer to kind of, let's just ask for God's protection on us and stuff. And then obviously it all goes tits up. And that feels like a commentary to me from Craven that God has abandoned them, essentially, is what that's saying. Whether that is the message that Craven is trying to elicit, I don't know, but it's the only clear message that seems to come out of that particular moment. This woman is, trying to get her family to pray for protection. They do, and they don't get protected. And she, in particular, is one of the ones who gets killed. I do like, however, the fact that they fight back, which is something that and are victorious to a degree. Now, I think one of the statements of this film is obviously this notion that somebody who is white collar, white bread, like just your average kind of Joe who they pray, they go to church on a Sunday, this, that, and the other, can be turned into a killer by circumstance. If they're faced with, it's a bit like the one that pops to my head at the minute is, Rambo 4, where Rambo's like, it's very hammered home point in that particular film, where Rambo says to these people, these missionaries, don't go in there because it's the worst possible situation, and they're all like soft and gentle people, and by the end they're turned essentially into killers, people who are willing to cross that line because they've faced circumstances that no normal person should face. And that's kind of the same here. I think it's a bit more subtle here. I think that message is kind of like brought about in a better way here, although, as I say, the whole God's abandoned you, you're left to your own devices thing doesn't sit so well with me. Though I do enjoy the element in which they start to fight back and protect their own, which is something that is lost in particularly a lot of modern day horror films, where even if they do fight back, there's no point anyway, because they're going to die. They're all going to end up dead by the end of the film. You've got films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre back in the 70s, where even if they get out alive, they're a raving lunatic by the end of it, which... It's a case to be made here that's probably the way it's going to go for some of them at any rate. But yeah, I just, if we're going to have such a threat in a horror movie, and if people are going to fight back, I like there to be at least a ray of hope that, they can be victorious over the evil. And there is that element here. So I come out at the end of it and I'm a bit more satisfied by the result. Now, you can argue the merits of that, like, always, because at the end of the day, these people have become killers, and it's like, is that really something to be celebrated? And but it's just that's just a personal preference for me. I don't like coming out of a horror film, seeing people tortured all the way through it, and then not even getting out alive at the end. And that's not the case here. So it kind of gets a few brownie points for that for me. I feel like Craven is more inclined to care about his main characters than the likes of someone like, say, Ari Aster. I feel like most of the entertainment value that comes from this film is in the back end of it, so like the last third or the last half maybe. Once everything's kicked off, once these people know what the threat is, and it's like, okay, game on, that's when, for me, it becomes like a non-stop roller coaster, like that's entertaining, where it's like, who's going to win, who's going to get picked off, this, that, and the other. But like the build up to that, and this could just because I've seen so many movies now that came after this that follow those tropes. It does feel a bit tropey. It does feel a bit, you do have that old man at the start, don't go up to that mill or you'll find trouble. It's like, you always have that guy, and then they don't listen to him, and then obviously they find trouble. You have the father figure who just doesn't listen, who thinks he knows everything, and he's going to lead his family into a not particularly very nice situation. You've got the women who are kind of like need the men's protection and are cowering. But again, like I say, Craven does break convention there towards the end by having the woman come up with the plan. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, like I say, because the front end of the film I'm a bit bored by. It feels a bit tedious. It feels like it's going through a lot of the hoops you see in so many horror films. Whereas the second half is more just like, okay, game on, the race, here's the race, let's see who gets to the finish line. And I find all that stuff entertaining. I find Craven himself as a director to be very workmanlike. I feel like the reputation that he has as a great director or whatever, some people think he is anyway, I think he's quite workmanlike. There's nothing about his style that really jumps out at me that kind of impresses me in that way. It's more the material with Craven. Depending what the film is either good based on the script, and he knows what is needed to get coverage, so to speak. So if he gets coverage on a good script, you end up with a good film. But there's nothing in particular about his style that jumps out at me that kind of makes me think, yes, he's an incredible director. This is one of his better ones, though, from what I've seen. Even so, though, it's not like 5-star masterpiece or anything like that. And no, it does have a lot of its fans who champion it as one of the classics of the 70s, of the horror genre. But yeah, it's solid, very solid. But again, like, there's a dozen films from the 70s, horror films, that have much more about them than this, I would say. I also think this would have had much more of an impact on me had I been around in the 70s to watch it when it came out, because I think films these days have pushed the envelope so far. I mean, I've not seen the remake to this, but I can only imagine what that's going to be like. Definitely more in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre vein, like the modern Texas Chainsaw movies, where it's just really gross out. It's really, you can do a lot more with effects and things, and it's, yeah. The limitations that Craven had with this movie kind of make it a little bit twee by today's standards. For its day, I imagine it would have been quite impactful. Sitting in a cinema in 1977, watching it, there wouldn't be too much else like it around. So that's my thoughts on The Hills Have Eyes, but what about you? Have you seen it? And how would you compare it to the remake? Again, as I say, a film I've not seen. Which is better, this or the remake? Yeah, leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.